Hi, my name is David Wright. I'm a startup consultant and career mentor. I help pre-seed startups become successful and help people start their dream career. In this video, I'll be analyzing Launch Factory and sharing my thoughts on why you should consider this incubator. And if you are interested in starting a low-risk startup, you should apply to this program. Having consulted multiple different startups, Launch Factory solves three most common problems that cause startups to fail. These are no market, too much debt, and bad choices. First, no market. Lots of startups I've seen do not actually do a sufficient and cohesive study of the market and don't actually know whether or not their startup will thrive and grow to the potential they think it can. And this is especially important because I've personally consulted multiple startups where they haven't done an in-depth analysis of whether or not the product or service they plan on providing can actually be sold at the price point that the market would demand or would want. Number 2, debt. The benefit of Launch Factory is that they provide initial funding to cover both the salary for co-founders and initial costs. Debt is usually an extremely big factor and the reason why lots of people won't do startups, because it adds undue financial burden, stress as you realize you're taking on credit card debt just to pay off basic living costs, and as students, it becomes even more troublesome as you have to pay off your student loans. This way, you can work full-time on your startup idea and not have to manage both a full-time job and the startup on the side, allowing you to truly commit your time and effort onto the goal you want. Last but not least, bad choices. The most common thing I've also seen startups encounter is making bad choices because they just did not know or did not understand enough about how startups work, how VC funding works, or a whole multitude of other potential issues. Startups are very challenging to create. You really want mentorship, legal advice, and financial advice. You can get this from multiple sources or you can get it from one source. Either way, it's definitely beneficial and that guidance will pay dividends in the future. Any good startup consultant or advisor will help you avoid a lot of these potential pitfalls and save you a lot of time and money. Now, the specific markets and ideas that Launch Factory is doing for this year are the following: small legal claims, both inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom, esports, training or team management, so 2 different ideas in the esports market, digital privacy, consumer or business compliance, and audio, games and learning. More details can be found in the link down below in the description, where you can see all the details around all of these markets, market sizes, and potential ideas to solve the problems in these markets. These are all known and investigated markets. As a result, they are not moonshots, so there is lower overall market potential, not blue ocean strategies. However, because they're not blue ocean, they have a higher likelihood of success. Now you might be wondering, what does Launch Factory get for all of these services? And so they get a 1/3 stake. Now, before you stop watching, I'll explain why this isn't actually as high as you think. Other incubators might ask for less, but they also all provide less. This table shows all the major provided services that Launch Factory provides to founders, and on the right is the actual value to the founders based on my opinion of what a founder should value and what startups actually need. So the first provided service is a vetted idea. Now this is extremely important to founders. It's the only thing that for most founders is necessary. As previously mentioned, without a solid vetted idea, you could be creating a startup without a market to actually sell your product or service in the future. As a result, this is highly important and very beneficial to the founders. Additional details on all of the services that Launch Factory provides are on their website. In addition, all of the ideas and the marketplaces that they're being sold to and the market analysis is also on the website, free to access. The second service they provide is $300,000 in initial funding. This splits into a $200,000 salary for 2 years for both founders. That is $50,000 for each founder for each year. The remaining $100,000 is for initial costs. This includes business registration, computer purchases, relocation costs, and anything else that is necessary for the startup to start running. The actual value to the founder as a result is $300,000 cash, plus the founder's sanity, because now you aren't going into debt, and that is really good. Now you can at least cover your food costs. This especially is helpful for students because now you already have, in most cases, have student debt. This allows you to not have an undue financial burden that prevents you from being able to actually pursue this opportunity. This is not a comfortable salary. However, that is the point. Most startups start with almost no salary or in debt. And so as a result, because you don't have any debt for this, you have a survival salary, you are going to be substantially better off than most startups in terms of just removing that undue financial burden. Launch Factory gives you the choice of co-founder. This is very crucial because it allows you to find the best person you can work with. This can be both from their selection or from your own personal network. You cannot choose more than one co-founder, so it's just teams of 2 though. Personally, I believe this could be restricting for some startups. However, for software startups, this is usually a good number, especially for the type of market you're trying to address. Launch Factory does force you to have a co-founder, and this is important because most startups with only one founder struggle a lot more. This is because when you're working with a partner, you're in the trenches with someone. No matter how much mentorship Launch Factory can provide you, it is not the same because your co-founder is going to be doing the work with you. They can also cover for you when things get tough or for some reason you have a personal emergency. If you were running the startup on your own, that could cause your entire business to collapse. Versus now, because you have a co-founder, they can cover for you if need be. On top of this, when times get tough, there are emotional support as well. You can work together and you can work and push past, and you are cheerleaders to each other to help you support each other in moving forward and being able to develop the idea even when times get tough. There will be times when you need the discipline to push forward, and your partner will provide you with that discipline and that help. The fourth service that Launch Factory provides is constant mentorship for 2 years. This is important because without this mentorship, most startups will struggle a lot more than they need to. I recommend that all startups in any field, not just ones with incubators or not just ones with Launch Factory, all get mentors at any stage. The mentors might change as your business grows and develops. But no matter what, mentors are going to be there to help you avoid certain potential pitfalls that most startups encounter, or to help give you guidance on your specific industry, field, or type of service or product you are creating. Now, I will admit, I might be slightly biased because I am a startup advisor and consultant. However, I have seen the differences between startups that do have mentors and startups that don't. And every single time startups with mentors are always going to be moving along faster, struggling less, and avoiding some common pitfalls. Lastly, they will help you save time because you are avoiding certain things or setting up systems correctly at the start, so that way later on you don't have to go back and rebuild these systems or redo a lot of the work because it does not work or does not scale effectively. Also, VC funding, they have connections and they have networks that can help you get funding more easily. Standard market rate for mentorship at this early stage is 10% equity stake. Free legal advice is the next service they provide. This is also for free for 2 years. This can be useful. It depends on the type of business you're in. It depends on how much legal understanding and knowledge you already have. Lawyers can get expensive, but most importantly, basic paperwork is time consuming. One of the major benefits that having legal advice early on is that when you set up your systems, you can avoid, as similarly with the mentorship, you can avoid having to go back and redo certain aspects. And it protects you so that it decreases your likelihood of getting sued. And if you do end up getting sued, lawsuits for businesses are a minimum of $1 million. This is because of both the costs of court, but then also the costs of your lawyer, the costs of lost time due to not being able to work on your business and instead having to go to court and file paperwork. So when you include all of that, it becomes really evident that lawyers can be very beneficial. And even for someone like me, I personally have experience reading laws, interpreting them, reading case law to make sure that I'm interpreting the laws correctly. It's still very beneficial to have lawyers helping me on certain aspects just because they don't need to spend as much time reading case law because they have experience as a result in terms of both patent interpretation and a lot of research. They save you a lot of time. Standard market rate for legal advice is about $15,000 to $100,000 for startups. It ranges depending on the depth that you need and the amount of lawyer time that you need to investigate all of the different criteria and all of the different aspects that your business might encounter. Moving on to the sixth service that Launch Factory provides, free financial advice for 2 years. This is similar to legal advice and similar to mentorship in that with this you are avoiding, in this case, mostly accounting work, redoing your accounting books, which can be extraordinarily time-consuming. And on top of that, making sure that you understand how much runway you have, how much revenue you have, your costs, your cash flow, because without that, you could run out of money before being able to expand, and that is what most businesses encounter. Around 70% of businesses fail because of a lack of cash flow, and it's just not worth having a good idea, an amazing business, only to run into a cash flow problem that causes your business to collapse. In addition, lots of VC funds and even some angel investors will want the minutiae of all of your financial breakdowns, how you plan on growing, all of these key financial factors that if you don't have a financial advisor or you don't have a background in business analysis or financial analysis, it will likely be very hard for you to be able to answer the questions accurately and also be prepared when VCs do ask you about these numbers. Standard market rate for financial advice is $15,000 to $50,000. The less financial experience and financial analysis experience you have, the more likely this is going to benefit you, and the value will be way over $50,000 because of the time savings and the ability to get VC funding at a more accurate rate, so that instead of giving away a lot of equity and so getting a lower valuation, because you have all the details, you can more easily get the valuation numbers you expect because you can back them up with data. If you do have financial analysis experience, startups are still slightly different in the sort of data that they want and require. As a result, it's still around $15,000 of value on the low end. Moving on to the seventh service, founders have majority equity, but Launch Factory can tie break. This is a byproduct of Launch Factory having a 1/3 stake in the business. However, this is something that most founders, especially two-person teams, don't really realize in most cases, in that if one of the founders does not have veto power, or if one of the founders does not have a slightly increased stake over the other founder, if there is a disagreement in the business cannot move forward. And this can be extremely harmful because with startups, growth and constant development and improvement is highly important. Any delays can be seriously damaging to the business. Launch Factory here, because of both its mentorship advice and all, can provide a better understanding on both sides to hopefully resolve to a cohesive and effective solution. But if the disagreement still cannot be resolved, Launch Factory can tie break and help the business keep moving forward. Service number 8 that Launch Factory provides: free office space for 2 years. Launch Factory advertises this as one of their top 3 reasons why you should go with Launch Factory, because they have free office space in San Diego for 2 years. From my experience as consulting startups, this isn't actually that valuable. This is because most startups will actually go to VC offices when they are pitching their idea or their product or service. As a result, the VCs will almost never actually see the environment that the startup is being created out of. So if you're creating it back in your own home and the team is all in one house, then the office is redundant because you still need a place to sleep in anyways. So why not just work directly from that place? It's like with most startup companies back then, Apple, they just started out of a garage. It's the same thing. Unless your team really benefits from working in an office and separating and distinguishing between the workplace and the home, then an office space can be very valuable to you. But for most others, this working remotely, working from home, being able to call VCs over video chat, and with very few people ever coming to your office, it really isn't that valuable. And just to add on to the working from home, you have a very low salary, so realistically, you're not going to be going out and having fun activities or hobbies. It's pretty much going to be 24/7 working on your startup. Distinguishment between home and the office really doesn't matter for most startups. As you start expanding, it can be useful because you can start hiring other people and they have somewhere to work instead of directly out of your own home. However, with the next point, you'll quickly see why that isn't as important for Launch Factory specifically. As a result, I've given this a value to the founders at $0 all the way to $20,000 per year. I looked for the cheapest office that I could find in San Diego. This might be in the middle of nowhere. I do not know San Diego's real estate very well. But if $20,000 is actually accurate, then it is not a large value that is being provided regardless. Service number 9 is direct investment access of $1 million to $30 million after 9 months. 9 months is usually around the time when most startups, especially this type of startup, will have already achieved a minimum viable product and will already either be beta testing or initial preliminary release to the market. As a result, during this time, you will then start being able to see revenue, and that revenue will allow you to go to VCs and get more money to be able to grow and expand. As a result, because this is at around the 9-month mark, and the 9-month mark is usually around when you would start considering hiring more people, with this new funding, you can always just lease an office space using this new money. This additional funding, because it's at the 9-month mark, if everything is going smoothly, which it's a startup, things usually don't go that smoothly, but if things do go smoothly, then you can already start increasing your salary at this point from this new investment money. As a result, this really is nice because the value to the founders is you get quick, easy access to future funding. You don't have to spend a lot of time searching around for different founders. For different VCs, you don't need to cold call a lot of people because you have contacts for it. And as a result, you also get a quick salary bump, and so that just saves you time and effort. And the last service that Launch Factory provides that I found on the website was you are being backed by a known startup founder, and Launch Factory does now have a reputation in the industry. As a result, with all this, when you start moving past your direct investment access funding after the 2 years, and you start looking for more funding outside, so later seed funds, later series like B, C, then you have a lot easier of a time because they know that you are backed by a strong foundational support. And so it is just easier and simpler to get funding. This is an intangible benefit, but helpful nonetheless. In total, with all of these different provided services added up in the actual value that it provides to the founder, it ranges from about $330,000 all the way up to $470,000 in terms of capital asset value, so most of it's cash, and then in addition, a 10% equity stake in the business based on the mentorship, and lastly, intangibles such as no debt, which just helps with your mental health and with your stress levels, a sanity because you are able to move forward faster and spend less time on annoyances that most startups will encounter. Now, comparing this total to the 1/3 equity stake that Launch Factory gets, it means your company is already being valued the moment it starts at $1 million, which is not too shabby. But more importantly than that, the intangibles here is really time. You can always spend your own time learning all of these different aspects, or potentially wasting your own time by going the wrong path and then fixing it and then learning the right thing and doing the right thing, the more efficient pathway. However, with startups, you want to try and decrease as much wasted time as possible. It's going to cut into your runway, it's going to cut into your sanity, and it just isn't worth it. As a startup advisor, I've seen the differences, and you lose a lot of potential money on the table from VCs. You give away a lot more extra equity away if you just don't have this sort of support. So yes, they take 1/3 at the start, but it saves you a lot of time so you can focus on growing and developing and actually making an impact with your business on society. And most importantly, you are not investing any of your own money into this business at the start, which means you have substantially lower risk than most startups. Because no matter what, startups do occasionally fail, not out of result of the founders. Startups can sometimes fail just because the market goes the wrong way. It's just pure luck sometimes that will cause startups to succeed and fail. Even if you already have a good idea in a great market with great founders and everything seems to be going well, something might go wrong. There's always a chance of that. With startups, it's always higher than any other business, and so not having to put your own money in will save you money, will also save you from going into debt, because what a lot of people don't realize is that if you create a startup using debt and you go into a lot of debt to do so, if your startup fails, you can never really pay back that debt easily. Most startup founders will take on large amounts of credit card debt, and that is extremely difficult because now even when you go searching for a job later, you're going to be stressed and not able to actually accomplish very much because you're just desperate to pay off your debt. Launch Factory helps you by avoiding that, by giving you a livable salary and initial cost funding, so that way you don't have to go into debt to start this business. And this is especially important for students or anyone who already has debt. You don't have to gain any more. And one of the big reasons why students cannot pursue startups coming out of university is because they already have a lot of student debt and just need a job to pay that off and aren't able to pursue a startup even if they really want to pursue a startup. During the initial candidacy period, while you are competing to win the funding and do this startup, it is part-time, it is only on the weekend. However, if successful and you are chosen as a founder, you will be doing this full-time. And keep in mind, the workload is immense. As with all startups, it is exhausting. It's not something that you just do for fun. It is something where you want to make a change to society, you want to make a difference, you want to commit, and you want to improve something substantially. If you need convincing to pursue a startup, I would say don't pursue it. No matter what, even though these ideas are market vetted, even if these markets exist and the idea will work, if you aren't interested deeply about these areas, you will suffer when it comes to actually getting into the nitty-gritty, doing all of the work, all of the nuances, all of the little things that you have to consider, all the details. It will become exhausting, it will become annoying, and it will be difficult. This video analyzes Launch Factory and whether or not someone interested in entrepreneurship and becoming a startup founder should pursue Launch Factory as their incubator option. This video is not to convince people who like being employed with a steady job to suddenly quit their job or suddenly join this and leave and become an entrepreneur. So yes, I personally believe giving away some equity for all these benefits is worthwhile. And in any business, giving away equity to get a service, this could be anything from technical development of website design, optimization of your code, or financial advice, legal advice, all of this stuff has a value. And sometimes it can be substantially valuable to you depending on your own experiences and your own background. Now, if you are interested in Launch Factory as an incubator, but you aren't interested in the current 4 markets that they are currently looking for founders for, then you can wait till for future years. Every year, Launch Factory comes out with new markets, new ideas, and a new application process. As a result, wait until later if you really are interested in this type of incubator, but are not interested in these ideas, in these markets. To summarize the major services that Launch Factory provides, first one being, they make sure that your idea is vetted and the market exists. Number 2, that you do not go into debt. You have initial basic funding, so that way you can fund both the business and your own basic salaries. And lastly, avoiding bad choices because they provide mentorship, legal, and financial advice. So if you are more technically focused, more of a software engineer, programmer, coder, or even a development/designer type person with less business acumen or business analysis understanding, then this incubator can definitely benefit you. Now, the restrictions that Launch Factory has on their startup founders. The first one being that you must be authorized to work in the US. Launch Factory does not provide sponsorships, and because you must move to San Diego, you must have US work authorization. You can only have 2 co-founders. You cannot have a team of 3 or more people. And the last one being forced to move to San Diego, your living costs will be high. As a result, the $50,000 really doesn't go very far. Some people might like moving to San Diego anyways, or an excuse to move there because it is warm, especially for people who might not like the winters of the north. Being in person, where the mentors have direct access to you, in-person access, is definitely helpful. More immediate solutions, more direct walk-by coffee chats even, that will get you solutions faster than having to set up calls here and there. One last thing to be aware of is that you need at least a bachelor's degree or be in your last year of your bachelor's and be completing your coursework by June. Coursework needs to be finished because you have to move to San Diego by June. However, degrees convocate substantially after the term is done. As a result, based on the rules I have read, as long as you're able to move and you have no more coursework that you must complete, you should be eligible for Launch Factory. To finish off this video, as I will do with all videos, and you should do with anything in your life, do your own due diligence. Before you leave for San Diego, make sure that you've read through all the contracts. If you're not that great at reading contracts, have a lawyer look over it. It will save you in the future. As a result, make sure that you're ready, you're happy, you understand everything you must do upon moving to San Diego. To pursue this startup, you must understand your commitment. But pursue your dreams. Be happy. Apply for this if you are at all interested, because you will learn a lot, regardless of whether or not you end up being selected or whether or not you end up choosing to go. This video are my own thoughts. I'm not affiliated with Launch Factory. This is all of the research I've done through reading the entire website and also watching all the different videos and looking at their different market analysis. But do your own due diligence. Always know what you're walking into. The link to the website and the link to apply is down in the description below. If you are planning on applying, please put David Wren as the refer, and also put my email, david@davidconsultant.com. The deadline to apply is February 21st. If you really enjoyed the video and you got a lot of value from it, please give it a like, comment, share with anyone else in your network who might be interested in this type of opportunity. If you have any questions about this, either email Launch Factory if it's a detailed question about them, or if you have any other questions about my thoughts about Launch Factory or any other startups, comment down below and any other videos you'd like to see. Like and subscribe if you want to see more about startups and career mentorship. See you next time.